dive back into Kevin's questionable AirPod setup, single ear, keeps one ear
Why
to
do you
the
need
world.
two? I can hear you more than enough with one ear.
I just feel like it opens you up to distractions. Like you can hear one set of stuff out of one ear and then this out of the other.
There's only so much Taylor I can handle. So one ear is usually the bottleneck, the threshold
Right.
keeps it at bay. Well, speaking of important people, we have Josh Mente on the call today.
Oh, I'm the important person.
Yeah, you're definitely the important person. Yeah,
Out of the
on
three
our
of
B
us, for
tier
sure.
podcast.
Yes.
Moved up to B tier from C tier, so that's good.
Yeah. Thanks for bumping me up.
It's a self rating. Yeah. Well, we with good guests come good ratings, so we appreciate it. So Josh, you have a co-working space, Co-Balt, in Baltimore, Maryland, and we've known each other since I think maybe around COVID, maybe just before COVID we met. Taylor and I have both had the pleasure and honor of working with you before, and we thought you'd make an interesting guest on our pod and just sort of talk about your marketing and your business. You have a very unique product over there. You've been exploring opening a second location, so we're going to talk about what happened with that and just your general experience, your wealth of knowledge, and from our experience working with you, you're very systems minded. So we just wanted to tap into it. There's lots of gold in there, and we're just going to try to unpack as much about your business and what's going on as we can and learn from you.
Well, thank you. And thank both of you for helping me gain knowledge and build a bigger business, better marketed business.
It's our pleasure.
We try, right, Taylor?
Yeah. Before we jumped on here, I was trying to think when you and I last worked together, and I think it was on Hampden Yards, but we'll dive a little more into that later. But I think as far as Co-Balt goes, it's been quite a while.
Yeah. Yeah, it has been a little bit.
Definitely
How's it been
going? Good. I think 2019 we launched, and then we got to full capacity, and then COVID hit, the world kind of shut down. Like it was one of those things that you're trying to figure out. It wasn't in the business plan. I decided to buy the building. So I was like, okay, what do we do here? And you just pivot, you move, you change, you adapt, you kind of, either double down, and kind of lean into it and try and figure out a different way of doing it. And the way coming out of it, it's weird to think in hindsight, it was actually a really good thing, both for my space and I think the industry as a whole. It kind of
Why is that?
Became a blessing. I think that a lot more people got exposed to the idea of what co-working space is because of needs, being forced to work from home and realizing it doesn't work that well for them. And then, it's no longer, and to a certain extent, it probably overlaps some of this anyway, but like remote workers who have what your stereotypical job would be that's normally in an office were forced at home, but it also expanded the workforce for any company to grab somebody out of Baltimore that has specific skill set that might not want to work from their home or might have children or find themselves watching TV or doing laundry or, a myriad of other things, instead of doing what they're supposed to do. So, in a lot of ways, coming out that side of it, we saw like hockey stick type growth and then plateau. And we've been able to keep the space full for the most part. We have these little ups and downs, but yeah, it's been really good.
I feel like it's definitely a sentiment that I've felt when the pandemic hit, because Kev kind of got me into this industry, I guess, like in 2017, and I decided to go all in probably in like 2018, and then was like starting to find the rhythm, and then the pandemic hit, and I was like, oh no,
yeah,
did we just all jump onto kind of like an industry in trouble, and then it ended up being exact opposites.
Yeah,
it was definitely it was like a worrisome moment there for a second. I mean, I didn't have a lot of skin.
Everyone feels that way.
Definitely didn't have as much skin in the game back then as you did, but still.
Yeah, and that was my exposure to it. Was like, all right, it's March of 2020. We're at 100% or close to 100% occupancy. Good, we're here. And then it was like, oh crap, what do we do? Like, who's going to come into work? What's going on? And honestly, through that, just like as a lesson, I took my background and reached out to every single person just to understand where they were in their business, what I could do to help, work deals with people, realize that essential workers, or as they were deemed to be essential workers, actually could keep the space. So it was one of those things where we just kind of worked it out and kind of tried to make the building as safe as we could, but keep it open for essential workers or others that felt safe, like they didn't care. It doesn't matter. And we just kind of rode it through for about a year, kind of just breaking even. And then, as things started to change a little bit, we just saw this uptick. Yeah, and even some categories that I had thrown in, like virtual mailboxes, right? Like, okay, sure. Like other people are doing this, let's do it. It actually, started to boom. And I'm like, this is crazy. But I guess when you think about it, more people working from home and want anonymity around it or presence within a location that someone can see. And, so we've had this growth that I didn't expect and we've been able to maintain it. It's been great.
Yeah, and I was going to
Actually,
say, like, I know you mentioned with your background, maybe like just to level set a little bit here. Can you talk a little bit about your background and how you ended up in this co-working world?
Yeah. All right. So I'll try and keep it short, but graduated college in the late 90s, got in the mortgage business. Um, by the mid 2000s, that business was kind of not on solid footing. I actually left before it did that. All the while I was investing in real estate, rental properties, flips, stuff like that. And then from that, I grew like a real estate team from just me to about 20 people in the end, doing about 450 to 500 sales a year, which was a pretty big, massive kind of machine that was always like firing and took a lot of time and effort and energy. And it actually led into what this is because we had a space, and when we rented traditional space, it was always either too small or too big. And businesses generally aren't linear for a 5-year period, which is the terms that people are generally looking for. You're either, outgrowing it or you're shrinking, and then you have one problem or the other. Very rarely does it ever stay stagnant. So from that, I started looking at alternative ways of space to house my company. And I found this awesome building. I wanted to buy it. It was too big for my real estate team. So it started me down this path of what if? Like, okay, so what if I contracted in the space? What if I grew in the space? And through that, I started really honing in on co-working because my idea and thought was that I could take my business, plan it in it, and then do co-working around it. It's a similar type environment, similar shared amenities. And then as my business grew, I could take over a space like office by office by office and eventually take the whole building over. Or the other side, if it's contracting, I can backfill the spaces. So we have this like symbiotic environment where I had a business take about a quarter of the space, it's about 10,000 square feet, shared amenities, and rented the others out. So it was interesting, and I couldn't find where anyone had done it before. And I was like, but it seems like in my head it works. And in the end, it was interesting. I ended up selling the sales team to my operations manager, and he wanted to move it out. So it actually made it super simple to say, sure, go. And all I did was just backfill the rest of the spaces. And then it was like off to the races. We're full blown co-working.
And so, do you own the building
Yeah.
that the Cobalt? Okay, so you do own the building that Cobalt's in, which is an incredible building. And I was going to ask you some questions about that later, but I think Kev had a couple things to dive into before I go down all those various
I
rabbit
was just
holes
like
and
sitting here
tangents. Like
listening to
typical.
a podcast right now. This is great. You just keep going. You just
Yeah.
keep going. No, Josh, you do have a really interesting. Let's go there because you do have a really interesting product, and I think it's important context for who you are and what you do. So, do you want to describe your business and how it's maybe unique?
Yeah. When I get this question often, what do you do? Like, if I'm in a position where I don't really want to have long conversations, I say an entrepreneur, right? And then like sometimes that offends people. Like, yeah, everyone's an entrepreneur. What do you do? And they're different businesses, but it's all centered around ownership of real estate. So I don't go lease things. If I'm going to operate the business, I want to have a long-term asset. There's always something behind it because leasing co-working space is just an arbitrage model. You're paying X for it in the hopes that you're going to get Y for it, and you make the spread between. I want to do the arbitrage and keep it for myself, all the while paying down and amortizing my debt. And then in the end, in 15, 20 years, hopefully have buildings paid off, producing income, sold off, whatever that might be. So, there's nothing wrong with either model. It's just that's my thing. My focus is on, building wealth through real estate.
I worked for McDonald's can work for you.
Yeah.
But you have so just your co-working space in particular is in a church, right?
Yep.
And so when did that become no longer a church, and then did you buy it like right on the tail end of that, or how did that whole acquisition come into play?
Yeah. So the church is on this main commercial district here in like the center of Baltimore. And I'd always noticed the building, but much like most people, I didn't really know what was inside of it other than some church pews or whatever. But what ended up happening was in 99, 2000, the church had caught on fire. An ad agency had bought it after the fire and converted it into around 2000. It was very advanced or like forward thinking. But really, ad agencies operate much like co-working spaces where you have communal spaces. So it was already kind of set up that way. So it operated with two different businesses from about 2001, 2 or 3, sold to a publishing company in 2007. And then, 10 years later, 12 years later, I ended up purchasing it and kind of converting it into co-working space. So the hard work and the bones are already done. I just took my skill set from like flipping houses. I'm like, oh, I can put lipstick on this. I can change this. I can get carpet in. I can move some walls around. I can reimagine a couple spaces and just kind of work. It's interesting. You don't know what you don't know, right? So like what I set forth trying to do, there's a core to it, but it has pivoted and changed along the way as the world has. Um, yeah, so but even within that, I bought the house next door and I thought I was going to build a parking lot because I wanted the land. COVID hit and I sat outside and in this backyard of this cool White House, which used to be the they call it parsonage, but like the priest, I don't know if it's a priest, pastor's home. So it's this really cool house and it had this big backyard with a couple garages on it. And I got these approvals to build a parking lot in August of 2020. And I'm like, well, if I build a parking lot, is anyone actually going to come in? And I was like, well, what do I do with it until it comes back? And I had this idea of putting a shipping container, building the parking lot, put a shipping container down and operating a pop-up beer garden, like just to get through and try and generate some revenue. And that actually got legs and it became this like, oh, why don't we just do this as an amenity to the space in the neighborhood? And, we've been open for 3 years and it's a pretty cool spot.
I got so many questions on a couple of those fronts, so I'm going to try to keep my thoughts organized here and dive into them sequentially. But
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah, this is gonna get long-winded, so buckle up. So the first thing I'm curious about was like, we talk about the building and the iterations that has gone through since you purchased it, and so for a local, like essentially a local business, how much do you find that your building and its character and its position in the community, how does that factor into your marketing? Is that a big selling point for your members?
Yeah. Everyone uses it for different reasons, but I think there's a common core. Like when they walk in the building kind of sells itself. Not very few people are not drawn to it. So that like kind of makes it a lot easier. It's not nondescript, office space. It's just drywall and drop ceilings. So there's an architectural significance to it that was preserved. And then there's this juxtaposition of going to work inside of what used to be a sanctuary. Like I get to tell my mom I go to church every day, right? So I'm a good Catholic boy, right? So there's some benefits, I guess, right?
Yeah, and so like now looking beyond just the building that you're in, obviously with Hampden Yards, which is the beer garden that you opened up, I think that when you kicked that off, it wasn't necessarily like a directly integrated amenity of Co-Balt, and so I'm curious now, like how has converting that into more of an amenity? It's listed on your website and things, and it's actually listed as a full amenity. How much has that played into the way you market the space, or how has that helped you market the space? Like, do you get leads who come into Hampden Yards, vice versa? Like, does it help you to include that as an amenity for people? How does that look?
Yeah, there's certainly an exposure that is given to it because the way the beer garden sets is off the commercial strip and it's in between this warehouse, this White House, and this cool church. So people know like what it is. So there's this, 20,000 people come through that space every year. So we took these window coverings that are perforated so you can see out, but you can't see in, and just covered windows back there that it basically advertised. We had a free billboard, like what we do. And, there's lots of different angles to it and different approaches. We use QR codes to track, basically, hyperlink it to whatever we want to. We can see that we're getting it through. I don't have anything quantifiable other than like, yeah, I could say like someone clicked on this QR code and eventually, went through sales funnel and ended up, booking a space. But overall, it's about exposure. And even within that, we have an event space within our co-working space that as leads are coming in for birthday parties or whatever it may be for the beer garden, it's like, oh, there's also this other inside space. And, if you're worried about inclement weather or all those kind of things. So there's some cross pollination that happens. But I think the biggest thing is that it anchors it as like a center, like a third space that people can come to, not just to go to work. So whether you're holding an event inside or outside, whether you're coming here with some friends after work, and even if you are a community member here and have an office or whatever it might be, it's nice on a Friday afternoon on a nice day to walk out literally out the direct back door and you're sitting in the middle of this little oasis in the city. So it's certainly it certainly has helped because I like to think of what we're doing here, not singularly as like just a co-working space. It's like how do we kind of anchor this into the community itself and get to a place where people use it because ultimately they're going to use it for what they want to use it for as much as we want them to use it for certain things. It's just people know now. Like I'm not saying this in any way, but I'll walk around the neighborhood and like, oh, there's Josh. He owns Co-Balt, or he's beer garden guy. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of I don't know. It's cool. It's community. It's a village. It's a really really fantastic neighborhood that we've anchored ourselves in.
Yeah, and that actually leads me perfectly to the next kind of thing that I wanted to talk to you about is obviously for co-working spaces, whether you're single location or multi-location, individual locations are generally, local businesses, they're community-based businesses. And as I recall from when we worked together, Hampden, the area that you're in, is very much, to your point, it is like a village. It's something where people take a lot of pride in it. It's like it's their neighborhood. So I'm curious in terms of like obviously people know you now. You got the beer garden, you've got the workspace. But how much of a factor does kind of community oriented marketing play in your strategy? Like, is it how big of a factor is that in your business?
Good bit. And there's a couple different angles, right? So it's done something for me, which basically personally, a lot of other opportunities are coming to me. Like we just bought a series of 3 buildings that surround this building within a half block. One of which we launched a wood-fired pizza place in as a second generation spot. The building next door, we built second. We took a vacant second floor with no access to the first and put a staircase in, and we're building 6 more office suites to do an adjunct here. Saw the opportunity where we can actually make the arbitrage difference on micro renting rather than bulk lease, and really just like finding ways to figure it out. So that warehouse I was referring that's part of this cocoon for the beer garden, it's like a 20,000 square foot warehouse. We just purchased that. And I'm working with a distillery to go in, hopefully we can get zoning tweaked and everything else. But I can see like what's happening. I guess this is more like a development mindset, is that each one of these pieces is a cog in the total wheel, right? Um, if you choose to take advantage of the opportunity, I don't mean take advantage, but like really see it more than just a co-working space and more than just today. Um, that's a long-winded answer, but I think that getting back to what you're asking, the Hampden Community Council, we actually give them space here for free, or it's not necessarily for free, but they have space and the ability to kind of use it, and it brings them. They have meetings, all kinds of different stuff where we want to engage the community where they're at and just be a resource to them. So it's not just like, how do we find someone that needs to come to work? It's like, how do we put down anchors and pillars and posts where we become an important part of the community? So it's like almost like I think of it like being a beacon to the community, right? That third space where you can work, you can play, you can gather, you can have events. And as we expand that, you put a distillery next to it, a pizza place on the street, and all that's going on around it. It's a pretty good horizon.
Yeah, opportunities bring more opportunities, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Um, And so how do you go about communicating that and getting the community engaged? Obviously there's the businesses and the access and people coming into them, and you're kind of building that reputation for yourself. But as far as Co-Balt goes, is there anything specific that you're doing to make sure that the Co-Balt name is out there and people are really understanding what you're doing? Like, is it partnerships with local businesses? Is
Yeah.
it your marketing? Like, what's that look like in execution?
Yeah. So it's always a multi-pronged approach, but I can give you one little thing that we do is we basically go on Nextdoor and we run ads, right? So Nextdoor is your neighborhood. So we just run these ads, which you buy a certain amount of impressions. We go on Craigslist and run some ads there. We also, basically go or through different periods of time, I'll know most of the business owners. So I'm involved with the Hampden Community Council in a cursory way. At some point, if I wasn't a business owner here or lived in the neighborhood, maybe I'd be an actual part of the community council, like on the board or something like that. That's not here right now, but it's an opportunity to present itself in the future. I would to give back, but also just further what we're doing. And then there's the Hampden Village EMA, Hampden Village Merchants Association. So they have a really strong association of all business owners, and I'm a part of that. And every business that we do is a part of that. So business owners come across lots of people and they know what we do, and vice versa. We trade business back and forth. Oh, you want art? You should go up to see so and so, and you want to get something to eat? Yeah, go over to Golden West. They're awesome. So it has that village mindset. I think when you just kind of like embrace it and roll into it, you have these opportunities daily, weekly, monthly, to come across people and, kind of communicate to them, what we do. And not like a hard sell, but just like this outreach, basically. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of what we do. And then, there are targeted things that we do that, are more hyper local as well.
Yeah. So the last thing that I'll ask, and then I'll stop talking so somebody else can take over here. But I'm also just curious because there's a lot of talk about, some operators or owners of co-working spaces don't want to put themselves out there as kind of the face of the business or have their story be part of the front and center of the business. Do you think that it's important for you as an operator to like have your story be out there and to have your face be out there as a core part of the Co-Balt business? Or do you feel like, you're kind of in the background?
I've faded into the background on the day to day here by design and on purpose, as I learned it, as we've had really competent people that can handle a lot of the day to day. As an example, I went out and got this cup of coffee, and I was over at the getting coffee. I was waiting for it to get done, and somebody said, "I need to get caffeinated like for these next 3 meetings." And I was like, "Yeah, I need to get caffeinated for this podcast." I'm going on, and we were just joking around. He's like, "Well, what's your podcast about?" I'm like, "Co-working," and he's like, "Oh," and then like light bulb went off that like I'm the owner of it or whatever. And it's like, I could be, kind of moved on. Long-winded answer, but what I'm getting at is I don't have to be the face of it until I need to be the face of it, right?
Yeah.
And I can, but I'm always marketing it, like not hard sell, but just kind of always letting it be known. Um, and we
Yeah.
have great people here that do the same thing too.
Yeah. I guess it's part of who you are. So it's only natural that it comes out when it needs to come out.
Yeah, yeah. This is not an ego play for me. I don't need to be known as anything other than a good guy that's, walking down the street or whatever.
Yeah, totally. I'd love to get down there and check out the neighborhood at some point. I feel like I've been hearing about it for 8 years, but
Right.
prosecution risk, Kev. It's all
Yeah.
yours from here on out.
And I think you have actually written about it as well, right?
I definitely
Yeah.
have. Yeah, yeah. The more we talk about it, the more I'm like, oh yeah, it's all coming back. I'm very familiar with this story. Yeah.
Well, I really love that, Josh, that you're building yourself as an entrepreneur, and not just as someone who owns a job like Taylor and I. You're actually, you've got many things going on, and you're
Hurts
not
when you say it out
central to
loud.
the
Yeah.
central to the execution. And it's interesting to hear that you started off doing kind of flips and residential and short term. I don't know exactly what mix of those things, and you've been slowly escalating. Now you're changing zoning here and there. You're building things. You're kind of developing an ecosystem that one thing can maybe benefit the other. So it's really nice. It's really interesting to hearing you kind of doubling down
Yeah.
in your community and kind of leveling up your investor, your developer skills, if you will.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah.
And I know you're pretty involved you're pretty involved in kind of the like you're coaching other operators on how to get started, and you're doing like quite a bit, which is really cool. And you were helpful to me a long time ago when I was thinking about getting into a property ownership for rentals and stuff.
Yeah.
So you're kind of it's nice to see your strategies come together. Are you like creating partnerships with these other businesses locally? Like, are you saying like, do members get like 10% off the coffee shop or anything like that? It's just pure, goodwill referrals.
Yeah, we've talked about it, but never fully executed anything real, like specific. Other than our community members here in places that I own have discounts when they go to, the beer garden or, pizza place or whatever it might be. Yeah, but it's like you almost, I don't want to say you don't need to do that because that is actually a really good tool, but the community that I'm in, like everyone wants to help everybody. So it doesn't even really take that, Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it sounds like you could easily say, okay, you get, an extra something if you order pizza across the road, or if you go to the beer gardens, maybe whatever, like there might be something you can do.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're doing anything like that, but yeah, it sounds like people are just keen on being engaged in the industry, or sorry, in the neighborhood anyway. So you don't have to like force any relationships, but
yeah.
This might be off topic here, and it might not be like super relevant, but I'm curious, like, were you already, I might have missed this, were you already invested in like the Hampden community before you purchased the building that Co-Balt is in? Or was that kind of an active decision where you saw, I guess you bought it for yourself, but was there any sense of like understanding that community and the community that you were in before you started businesses there? Or was it just kind of like a happy coincidence that was the community?
Well, the building was the foundation of it, right? I just really loved the building and wanted it. But yes, I had dealings in Hampden, both from myself of coming down and enjoying what the community actually is, all the way to having flipped houses in this neighborhood over the years. I already knew what the community was to a certain extent. It's being entrenched in it that I really, really understand it, in a different way. But this is one of the, in my opinion, one of the best streets in Baltimore, period. Like, and to own property on it, like awesome, like from a simple play like that, it was a no brainer whether this was the only building or that, it's kind of morphing into something else. And actually, interestingly enough, we bought another church about 3 blocks up the road, um, with an acre of land, and we're in the process of building 30 apartments in there. So, there's just opportunities, and, I didn't think I grew up to own one church, let alone 2, right? So,
Your mom must be very proud.
very
Does
proud.
it feel a bit like Monopoly, and you're starting to get like,
My kids tell me that.
uh,
They also
yeah,
they
that's
also remind me when I play Monopoly, I'm not good at it. They're
really
like, "We beat you." And I'm like, "Yeah, I play in real life. You can play on this board."
the irony.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
Hearing your story makes me want to rethink my whole approach to life and start trying to buy up real estate.
Yeah,
might have gone too far the wrong direction for that one.
In the end, we could probably sit down and have this conversation again, like 10 or 20 years from now, and say, how did that work for you? And your path is a great path too. It's just this is kind of morphed into my path and what I'm doing. But I would say, to anyone that's listening, if you have the opportunity to buy the real estate, and it makes fundamental sense, right? That you should always own the real estate that you're actually in, if it's possible. Now, if you're in New York City, it's certainly cost prohibitive, just as an example.
Vancouver, like Taylor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But someone told me a long time ago, that if you think forward 30 years, like everyone at that time always says it's too expensive, it's too expensive. And each year it goes like that, right? So it fundamentally has to make sound. I never want to buy a piece of real estate that has a negative cash flow right now, to the best of my ability. I won't set out to do that. Sometimes it may end like that, but there's never a better time to buy in that sense if you're doing long-term holds. Because 30 years ago was 1995. I'm in college. I could have thrown darts and bought anything at any price at that point, and I'd look like a brilliant person today.
Yeah,
And
that's fair.
in 2055, somebody will probably say the same thing about 2025,
Yeah, I'd always had that lesson ingrained in me from a young age. My old man used to be built drums for a long time. He was working in a warehouse space in Richmond here in Vancouver. And I think he needed like, 50 grand for his business or whatever. And the banker was like, I can get you like $1.2 million to buy this entire complex that you're in faster than I can get you 50 grand for your business. Him like having, his dad grew up in England in World War II and was like, keep the money in the bank. And he didn't do it. And he's like, I could have owned like 40 bays, all with revenue generating. And then that was like, what, 25, 30 years ago. And now that would have been worth just like tens of millions of dollars. And he always just went, if I just had a little more like confidence in it, I would have.
Musicianship, a little more entrepreneurship.
Well, just a little bit more like big picture thinking, like exactly what Josh is saying, right? Like 30 years from now, is this going to be the smart choice? So he was always saying, like, if you ever get a chance to get into some good solid real estate, like always maybe consider the risk, right? Like, so I've kind of had that same mindset that you were just talking about for a long time. I haven't acted on it very much, but
well, hey, you know what? There's no time like the present, right?
That's it.
What's interesting is what you're actually keying in on is how I bought this building. At that time, this was the biggest purchase I made, and probably, although I understood it, like a greater leap. And then each time you make one leap up the wrong, the next one becomes a little easier. What I understood was it's scale, right? Or size. I'm putting the same amount of effort into managing like these onesie twosies little rentals and or flipping a couple of houses for a fixed amount of money than I do in the energy I put into properties that are of greater scale. And once you do it, you're like, oh, okay, that wasn't that bad. I haven't got bankrupt yet, so we'll see how it goes. So.
Yeah, not good wood. Yeah.
So what do you? Sorry, you go ahead, Josh.
No, I think this might be what you were leading to. So, like through all this practice, it's like the only cool thing about getting older is not wrinkles, losing hair, whatever, going gray. It's gaining wisdom along the way, and each of these like stack one on the other. Yeah. But that's why when you speak with people that are older than you, I always respect it because they have like a lot of wealth of information for stuff they've seen that either you hope you've never seen or they're helping you not to see, as well as the information your dad passed on to you that comes from wisdom.
Yeah, you always got to listen. They've experienced things that you haven't had time to experience yet.
Yeah, and God willing, we'll experience it then pass along to others as well.
Yeah, that's why I listen to Kev so much. Just so much wisdom from those extra years.
All the things of what not to do. It's great. Yeah.
All those
character is what you get when you don't get what you want. And I feel like the same with a bit of wisdom. It's your dad shared a bit of that wisdom.
Absolutely.
So what do you look for, Josh, when you're building a case for either a co-working business or real estate in general? Like how do you look? Like I know you want to cash flow positively and then reduce it and have that delta between break even and profitability be as high as possible. But do you have like a rough framework for like what you go into or any numbers you look for?
Yeah. So I'll use this building as an example. When I sat down and was like really kind of analyzing and figuring it out, the bulk rent I could get here as a sorry, there's a bug flying on me. Okay. That was weird. I was like, why is something on my neck? Like, what's going on?
That would have spooked me out of the room. So good for you.
Well, I'm just trying to stay focused.
Okay, he's dialed.
Yeah. So I really looked at it. Okay, fundamentally, if I rented it to one tenant, what does that price look like? And that price for me that I was going to acquire it for had to match it working in that sense. Because if I'm trying to do this other thing and it proves not to be right, then what is the backup? Because I own it now. It's not a lease where I could say, sorry, it didn't work. Here's the keys, try and sue me, whatever, And so I really wanted to feel fundamentally sound that it can work in a different way as like a backup mechanism. Once that box was checked, I had just like really, really honed in on trying to learn as much about co-working, why the model makes sense. And like really what I settled into, it's like, it makes total sense because a lot of the world is moving in this direction where you have this bulk square footage that you micro lease and you get to, increase the rents by doing it. Self-storage is probably the greatest example of this. Or morbidly speaking, cemeteries are, you buy by the acre and you sell it by the foot, right? So like, and in self-storage, you basically, buy a warehouse and then you rent it by 10 square feet, 100 square feet, or whatever. And the sum of the whole is how you get there. And that's when like the pencil met the paper, and like we have about 5 or 6 different real revenue streams here. And you were able to understand that any of these perform above and beyond. I have the base rent set from the offices. I just need to figure out how the other ones play in and become the profitability. So that was kind of the way I walk through it. The underlying thing I'm getting at is that it needs to stand on its own. Because a lot of people reach for it like, oh, well, I'm going to get this in co-working so I can pay this. I just try and stay fundamentally sound in what I'm doing from like a real principle aspect of what I own this real estate if co-working wasn't a part of it.
The storage thing you mentioned is interesting. I actually have a storage locker here in Vancouver, and I bumped into somebody in the elevator at the storage locker, and I was saying, man, they must just print money with these self-storage facilities. And he said to me, that the price per square foot that storage unit or storage places charge in Vancouver is higher than the most premium residential real estate per square foot in the entire city, which, if you know Vancouver, it is not a cheap city. So I'm kind of curious, like co-working here is not, it's not a cheap option. So I'm curious what that looks like for the co-working spaces here in terms of, how much that factors out to comparatively to like residential real estate and how well they're all doing here. Cause there's only like 5 or 6, but I probably reverse engineer it and figure that out. But
yeah,
it's an interesting one.
It definitely is. I think each industry has its own way of doing it. And co-working, certainly has changed a bit in just my 6 or 7 years of doing it. And I think it'll continue to do that.
And you were looking at starting a second co-working space. So what happened with that? I think you told me it didn't work out the way you wanted it to. What happened there?
Yeah, the price we had it under contract for looked great, but you go through due diligence, and in this due diligence, excuse me, it was a 40,000 square foot building. We only needed 20,000 square feet. I didn't want or thought there was enough demand to fill 40,000. But the one floor was already built out as office space from a company 30 or 40 years ago. So the same thing, it only really needed reskinning and some repositioning. But they had, I don't know, something like 12 different HVAC systems in there, and they were all pretty much shut. So it was about a $500,000 to $700,000 like cost that wasn't factored in, that came in within the due diligence period. And then trying to renegotiate that, they were holding firm in their price, and the numbers just no longer made sense to take the risk.
Is it still an open idea? Like, could they come back to you, or is it a done
No, it's
situation?
still on the market. So in real estate, sometimes you
gonna
stay patient, right? And it comes back.
Interesting.
How long ago was that you were in that process?
Spring into the summer, and then by like August or September, we're like, okay, we're gonna back out.
HVAC. Crazy.
It just goes to show that you have to know what you're doing, because that, if you missed that, fundamentally your business doesn't make sense. Like the property doesn't make sense. It's a big deal.
Yeah, especially when you own it. You're not calling the landlord saying, hey, heat's not working, what's going on? It's it's a lot, right?
Well,
but it still falls right under that what I was saying to you. Fundamentally, I also needed to understand that this real estate could stand on its own 2 legs. If the shot I'm taking, co-working doesn't work in that neighborhood, I think it would have, like 90% sure, certainly would have. It's not a foreign concept. There's a lot of anchors and draws and natural things that, kind of from visibility to proximity to the CBD to all kinds of different things. I know it would have worked. But what is actually a different layer to it is the neighborhood was one of the first neighborhoods to gentrify in Baltimore. So it's been anchored for quite some time. But interestingly enough, it is going through a little turmoil right now where there was like a shooting the other day, which never happened before. And, some like vandalism and stuff like that. So it's like, oh, is this neighborhood turning the wrong way? So even at that point, it was like, this isn't the time to get aggressive till we figure out what's happening with the neighborhood.
Or maybe it is. Maybe
Yeah.
It's precisely when the fear is and the uncertainty is the most there.
Yeah. But that usually comes a year or 2 after, when then you get into fire sale, like we want out, that kind of thing.
Okay, Taylor, you can cut this out later, but look, you know what you do, Josh. You start graffitiing all the streets, right? When I studied sociology
Yeah.
for a class in university, there's like a broken glass theory. So the more broken glass, the more likely there's to be more broken glass.
Yeah.
I'm not, this
Yeah.
isn't going to go public, is it?
That's the
Okay.
that's the promo. That's the promo
If
snippet.
if something were to happen
Well,
to
I
the
mean,
surrounding buildings,
since it's going public, I didn't do any of the shootings or the other vandalism or anything, but
just to clear the air, we were all wondering. We didn't want to ask. Okay, I'm glad you got ahead of that one.
But
Yeah.
this was just a savvy business move.
We're learning
Yeah.
the real secrets here, folks.
yeah, I'm
Can't
not
get
the,
the can't get the HVAC covered. I'll just take matters into my own hands here.
yeah, right. We'll make this guy come down a different way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
make him an offer he can't refuse.
I think they call that the mafia, right? Isn't that what the mafia does?
Yeah, it's like in The Simpsons where Bill Gates buys out Homer's business and they break all the pencils and stuff. Yeah, a whole different era. Yeah, where are you going with Taylor?
Oh, just out of curiosity, you might not have thought this far ahead, but obviously you were talking about a second location in a different neighborhood, following up on the success of Co-Balt and Hampden. Did you give any thought to what you would need to do or how you would need to pivot the marketing to account for a second location in a distinct neighborhood, or did you think that you probably wouldn't need too much? What was the approach there?
Yeah, absolutely. I was building out a marketing plan, which, it pivots from like a single location operator to a multi-location operator, but you also have the greater ability to spread costs out and do different things, right? Which also leads to the ability to do more things that you only have a finite amount of money for one space and the other. But what's interesting is, and I'll say this, like we don't do a tremendous amount of marketing here anymore. We do, but not in the sense of what you do when you want to launch, right? So we have PPC and retargeting campaigns built already. We keep full and we have a bench. We have a wait list usually at all times. There's somewhere between 6 and 12 people that want the next office. So for me to spend money, it really means building more bench. So I'm like, we'll just pause that, right? Or even social media. We got to a certain point where I wasn't seeing ROI on it. I mean, some of it you can't quantify, it's exposure and front of mind and all that kind of stuff. So we paused that about a year and a half ago. We haven't seen anything change in the business, and we still have a bench. So it's like, okay, for this business where it's at mature, we have 100 plus reviews on Google. We have a good rating. Like you can go through all the metrics of it, and people find us. We still have 2,000 people a month that come to our website. So you're going through all these pieces, like, and I watch it. And if there's any tick down it, then we have the ability to pull a lever and say, okay, launch it. Leading into what you said, what you're saying is we'd rebuild the website to function between, this location, that location, and have to kind of incorporate those things, but also launch PPC and retargeting and just all the different pieces. Because now we would have two fishing lines in the sea. They're only like 5 miles apart, but it's like if people came to this location through a series of asking discovery questions, they're coming from a downtown neighborhood and commuting up here. It's like, do you realize that we also have this location over here? Or building memberships that you can use both locations if they're, kind of bouncing around. So yes, it would have relaunched a tremendous amount of campaigns and probably calls to you like, hey, I need some more copy. And
Yeah.
Kevin, like, hey, this is what's happening. What don't I know? What don't I see?
Well, Josh, say no more because Taylor and I have our marching orders. We'll get you that building.
I've always wanted to go to Baltimore. We'll go into the cover of a Ravens game.
There you go.
Well, I wanted to watch Derrick Henry run.
Yeah. And that neighborhood actually abuts the stadium. So we had a 30-car parking garage.
Plausible deniability.
Yeah, totally. What's interesting that you say that is that it had a 30-car indoor parking garage and it had a 20-car outdoor. The proximity to the stadium, one of the lines in the business plan was on Sundays for home games. You can rent them for 40 or 50 bucks a spot. Doesn't sound like much. I can have my kid there. They can split, whatever, get paid. But it was literally, when you looked at it, it added like, I don't know, 15 or 20,000 to like the gross bottom line. I'm like, okay, well, looks like we'll be renting it for, Ravens games. But you just look at it like with all these different angles and opportunities. And I think what led me to this building or that building isn't that I have a secular mindset. I need to be in this neighborhood. I just see opportunity or able to see things beyond like what's actually in front of their face. A lot of people can only see, if you go into a dilapidated home, all they see is like, oh my God, there's, this going, this wall is falling down. I'm like, oh, I see the opportunity here. We can make X, Y. You hear a funny story? When I was flipping houses,
Yeah.
I also, as an agent, I used to sell bank properties, and these two investors were kind of like, hey, I want to see this house. I'm like, cool. I'll take you out. You both meet there at the same time, just saves a trip. One was experience, one was inexperience. This is actually a funny story, right? So I walk in and the house is full of mold, right? The inexperienced investor walked in first and said, oh my God, this house smells terrible. Oh my God, right? Was freaking out. Literally, the experienced investor walked in behind. He goes, smells like money to me, because he saw the opportunity.
A little bit of knowledge, right? Like you
Yeah,
got to know what the implications of that smell
that's
are
right.
or not, right?
Yeah, and what you need to do to, fix mold issues and do it right and everything else. It's the
A
opportunity.
friend of mine, yeah, a friend of mine, his dad was in commercial real estate. I think it's like strip malls and stuff. And he was saying that the real value of real estate is the dirt under the ground. He's like, they're not making more of it, and whatever else. So he's like, whatever's on top, it's really the dirt. And I just wonder how much of that is part of your mental calculus when choosing a location.
Yeah, always. Like Taylor, when you were telling me about that warehouse that your dad forgot to buy, he was talking about 40 days. I'm like, in Vancouver, wherever that's located, I'm thinking about the dirt, right? Because
Yeah.
scale, and you can build apartment buildings and all kinds of other things. So it is a part of it. This building here specifically is on the National Historic Registry. So the dirt doesn't matter in the sense of the value of the dirt. However,
Unless something were to happen to the
yes,
location.
correct.
Sorry, I keep taking a dark turn.
It already
I have
happened
no ties to
once.
the mob.
Yeah, it
It's
happened
formulating
in
a plan.
2000. But
Okay, yeah.
but what is interesting is the first rule of real estate is always location. So we have this little 10 by 10 piece of dirt on the avenue that is this like open piece of land. It's not much, right? So I had this idea of renting or getting a shipping container and dropping it in order to rent it to somebody to, sell hot dogs out of or whatever. I was talking to a local business guy, and he owns a restaurant across the street, and we were having lunch in his restaurant. He's like, what are you doing with that? There's a couple of parking spots behind it. I said, oh, he saw the parking spots. I saw this open piece of land that faced the avenue, like with all the foot traffic. To that, I think I'm gonna drop a shipping container and give it to somebody to rent, sell hot dogs or something at it. He's like, oh, let's talk about the parking spots. And I had mentioned like snowballs is like a thing here in Baltimore. It's like shaved ice, and it's like a cultural thing here. I said, like hot dogs or snowballs. He's like, I've always wanted to run a snowball stand. I was like, really? Oh, cool. So we worked out a deal, and he does a land lease. It is the price per square foot you're talking about. In a 10 by 10 piece of land, the amount of money I get out of that, I'm going like, I don't want to own any real estate. I just want to own land and do land leases. It's
No kidding.
yeah, and I mean it's a component of this whole project. It can't carry the whole project, but it's dirt. That's it. There's a shipping container that sits on it that you purchase. So I'm
Two
like,
shipping containers on top of one
yeah,
another.
right, but
You
yeah,
just don't.
correct, exactly.
You can have that idea.
Yeah, that parking spots become more shipping containers or whatever. But what's interesting about this is the mindset that I always have is like mutually beneficial relationships, right? So it didn't mean I needed to extract every dollar out of that land lease, but he had the opportunity to put something in a small space that's easy to run across the street from his restaurant and have all the foot traffic. And it's been really successful. The community loves it. And again, it's one more thing I'm leading to where you can come here and get a snowball, with your kids, or you can go out back to a beer garden, or hopefully soon to be a distillery, and you can work here and have events here. It's just all part of that component.
Yeah, I heard someone call those things like outsourced amenities for your co-working space, right? It's all the tertiary things that are around that maybe aren't necessarily part of your building, but the more you have, and I guess in your case, the more you own, the more you have to kind of direct people to and continue to build up that whole desire to be there.
Yeah. So a second level of this, and I know there's probably other things we want to talk about, and now we're talking about real estate ownership, but
Yeah, this is
let
fun.
let it be what it is. Um, what's interesting about our neighborhood is the village doesn't have any and very many large scale buildings that can hold like a co-working space of size and critical mass that it really needs for the operator to be profitable. So what I also see is the opportunity of these second floors on these storefronts being able to, like, I bought that building and adjunct it. So we can have some office suites where people want something quieter, but still have access, being within a block to come across the street and hold conferences or have the more amazing, meeting and, people are wowed by the oldness of this church. But I see the opportunity. I would never buy that building knowing what I know now. I'm like trying to run a co-working space with 6 offices to rent. There's just not enough scale in it. However, if I could add that piece to this when we're already doing this and we have a bench and I know we can keep it full, like, okay, great. So I can kind of maybe go up and down and acquire buildings and be able to rent them for greater amounts than I would to somebody else. Excuse me. But the thing is, where we are is I don't think we're going to naturally get a lot of competition here just because of that, the commercial stock that's available on the avenue or even within a perimeter of it. So we kind of have this natural defense where we're the option in the neighborhood. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And I'm so interested in the real estate stuff now. I'm trying to keep myself on topic here and treat the real
He's
estate as
Googling like buildings.
now I have a million and one non-marketing related questions about real estate now. I want to pick your brain on. Pick that another.
Start a
I'll
second
bug you about that
podcast,
another
guys.
day.
Yeah. I'm happy to have that conversation. As you can tell, I have a little
Well,
knowledge
people
and
listening to
passion.
this are like we're all in the real estate business, so I'm sure many people are kind of picking up things and thinking about. And I think it's always important to think about the business case of things. And I like your ecosystem mindset is what's going to make that total experience more valuable for everyone, because that's really what people are buying into. I was just touring 2 office spaces today, and one is in a better little community and one's downtown, and there's trade-offs to both. And so it's really the entire experience, even driving to the office and then what's going to be there and parking and like could you imagine bringing clients and taking them out to the beer garden in the backyard and whatever else, like all these things factor in. So it's just really interesting to hear you kind of building these businesses that do somehow cross-pollinate or benefit one another.
Yeah.
I think it's valuable whether people do that or not, just that mindset of how do we keep creating things that can add on value to each other.
Yeah, think beyond the walls a bit.
Yeah. So you've been full for a while. It sounds like you're not doing the Google Ads stuff anymore because you're not in that form of marketing. You've got a backbench, which is awesome. And you're doing, I think one of the interesting things you said you're doing was next door advertising. So hyper local. I guess that's a bigger app. We don't have that really here in Canada, so that wouldn't be an avenue.
Yeah, well, you know what it is, right? And how it works. Yeah. So there's probably
like a
some
community board.
No, it is like Facebook for neighborhoods, right?
Yeah, that's what I
So
thought.
yeah, people are posting, businesses can advertise, and it's like a natural social media news feed. Someone's talking about their cat that ran away, and somebody's talking about the neighbor they hate, and the good things are going on in the neighborhood and everything else.
It's good it's got adoption because Facebook groups do that. And so to have that stand alone and work. So I'm going to think about that with some of my clients too, locally is, what are they doing? And this is what I'm always trying to do, both digitally and physically. How do you physically and digitally show up in all the places where your target customer lives? And then ideally it's contributory. It's not necessarily just sales oriented. You're doing maybe pop-up events, or you're doing open houses, or you're offering space to the local community associations, or and goodwill happens, word of mouth happens. Sounds like a lot of your success is now probably sustained through word of mouth as well. Is that do you get a lot of referrals?
Yeah. So like even example, we had an unfortunate thing happen. A building caught on fire here in the neighborhood that had some businesses in it. Literally 3 or 4 phone calls came to me. Businesses need to relocate. Do you have any space? Yeah, we'll find it. Bring them in and we'll take care of them any way we can. There are already people and on the community council, and also constituents or neighborhood people are already looking our direction, because I'd say don't if look, it's different in your central business district. There is no real neighborhood. Like that's where you're going to work. But when you're in a community, you really have to kind of like lean into the community. So I'm not even afraid to give away like conference room space for meetings and civic organizations. And we've had politicians come here. It's like, no, I don't want anything. Just come here. Like, all good. We're here to help you. Because I think everyone looks at it like, is this lost opportunity of like, I could have made $100 on that 2 hours in the conference room or whatever. I'm like, no, it's a much greater opportunity of creating goodwill and anchoring yourself further in the community. as well as they're bringing 10, 20, 30, 40 people that are experiencing your space, right, for the first time or maybe the second time, and thinking of it in future, needs and endeavors.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's so interesting because it's like, in talking to you, it almost seems like you've done so much of the legwork in terms of marketing, both in advertising and community building and all those various things, that now you're at a place where you're kind of you've established you've established yourself through strong marketing for so long that now you're able to kind of take the foot off the gas a little bit, and like it kind of self-sustains to a degree, which is interesting. I feel like you don't hear that very often, but it's cool to hear
And
you talk about it.
he's got a super
And a
unique
wait list.
product as well, right? Like Taylor, like, I mean, I think being in a church means it's not like an undifferentiated building with, whatever. So he's got a great product, great surrounding ecosystem that's only growing and developing, and reputation, goodwill, like you said, Josh. Sometimes it's not worth the $100. It's worth getting the 40 people in who each have 100 people in the business community that might be of interest to that. And who knows when that may come back and benefit you. I think it's always good to be generous, especially with your hyper local business and maybe political and just neighborhood
Yeah,
folks.
yeah. And I'm not saying I do all of that, thinking I'm gonna get something back, but it's like karma. I just do right by others, it just
Yeah.
just all works itself out in the end, And yeah, when you put it that way, Taylor, yeah, it's a fast success that took hard work for 6 years, right? But ultimately, the goal in these businesses is to get to a place where they're mature in doing these things. But you also have the experience, like, okay, if something happened, I know what levers need to get pulled and know what we need to do. But for now, it's like I'm just looking at spending money on retargeting and PPC. Like, I don't have any more offices to rent, and that's only temporary. It can only be temporary, right? But I'm just saying I can spend all this money just to build a deeper bench. It's like, okay, for now
So
I'm good.
are you focused on ancillary revenues now, meeting rooms and virtuals? And if so, are you using ads for that, or like what are the financials looking like that for, say, non-member
Yeah.
utilization?
So, um, yes, sort of. So what's interesting is that those are where we need them to be based on our capacity, right? So we do about 3,000 a month on average of outside conference room rentals. Anything more than that would probably impact our people that are here. So like if we tried to book the conference room every single hour, then the people are here that need them don't have access to it. So there's also this balance in it where, yeah, it's great, love to grow it, but I think we're at a good place with it. Uh, but there comes a point where I can shift that mindset to basically say, okay, is there another building nearby that makes greater sense and I can expand within the community? And then go after all those kind of things, again, second time. But I did it once, twice, 10 times probably. Yeah, they're just levers for me now at this point. So the active use of them is the one important. It's learning my way through what it took to actually get it in place and have it in place and the best practices around it.
So we're just kind of rounding corner here on time, but if you do coach other co-working operators. So by the way, if anyone's thinking about getting started in this business, reach out to Josh. It won't be hard to find, and we'll give his contact information in the show notes. But as someone who does this, has operated, is running many businesses that kind of combine together and serve, work together, is there any kind of parting advice that you would give to another operator who's either current or just getting started, or thinking about getting started? One kind of central theme that so they can take home.
Yeah. You think of one thing. You know, if you're new, don't be afraid to try and put yourself into rooms of people, networking groups, gentlemen like Kevin who are tremendously influential in helping you figure out where you're at, where you want to go, and kind of lean into what this actually is. What I've found is that when I talk to people that are other co-working operators, there's this mindset of like helping, right? It's natural, inherent within your business, but look, if you're operating a co-working space in Vancouver, I'm no threat to you. You share ideas, I share ideas, or whatever. it's like lean into what the community actually is and try and find things to help, because with that you'll actually accelerate your your progress or your success or your occupancy or whatever it might be.
That's a great tip. I've seen that over and over again. The most generous people in this industry, in this industry is full of generous, helpful people, but those that are the most open and the most generous are the most successful. And I don't know if that's a coincidence, an accident, or if that's, partly because of that, openness, generosity, and not having that feeling like someone's going to steal your idea, or like a scarcity mindset. This industry is already good at that, but those who are excellent, especially on the edge of that, are by far the most successful. So it's interesting to hear you say that.
Absolutely. And even when I came to you, I was figuring it out. But when we worked together for that period of time, like, you saw what I was doing, you were transferring your information to me, and I was like, okay, I got this, and was able to hyper accelerate that growth. So yes, scarcity mindset is a great way to put it. And sometimes I always think people think of things as expenses and not investments, right? So you can look on a P&L and say that using a coach, or, you know, marketing this or that, just be very mindful about how you spend your money, but don't be afraid to spend it and figure out, does that work? Because I will tell you, I learn best from failures, not successes. So it's like, what didn't work, I try and figure out, and I try not to make the same mistake twice. So they're almost more valuable than the actual ones that actually do work.
And just, on a personal note, anytime I've worked with business coaches a few times, and every single time, almost every single time, but any big major change that's improved has been as a result of working with a coach, because there's no real consultants for people like me. They're coaches, all of them. But so yeah, I mean, obviously I'm biased as a consultant, but I do think learning from other people's mistakes is a nice way to fast track it. And I'm the exact same way.
Sure.
And there's a certain percent of your revenues and your profits, I believe, should be reallocated to what I call your inefficiency budget.
Yep.
Stuff that just may not make sense and is not perfectly logical, but you should do, because it ends up, especially if your instincts are pointing you in that direction. I don't know. I've always followed that, and some percent of my money, some of it's a waste, and some of it's a home run.
Yep.
And you never quite know what you're going to get, but as long as you don't hire a tailor, you'll be fine. And
tip for life.
Yeah.
I've also never hired a business coach, but I do have Kevin on Slack, and I have his phone number, and he hasn't figured out how to block me yet. So
yeah, the invoice
just as
is
good.
Getting lost in the inbox, but
must have my old email address or something.
I'll be kind enough to give you a plug too, right? So like, I can write, but is my time best use spent writing copy, or can I do it at the level of someone else, right? So when those two match, like, yeah, like, let's get this done while I can focus on income producing activities. And
Appreciate the plug.
Taylor does a great job.
God,
we wouldn't have this podcast without Taylor Mason. So, as much as we like to rag on one another a lot, Taylor is an excellent guy to have on your team. So all jokes aside, he's the backbone of this operation.
You guys. You guys.
Well, thanks, Josh, for imparting your wisdom on us. And
yeah,
we'll see you in a couple of weeks when we come for that Ravens game.
Yeah.
We have enough problems here in the city. We'll just let you stay home. We don't need any more graffiti or broken windows. So
they don't really let us in anyway, to be honest.
Well,
already wary of us.
In all seriousness, you guys are always welcome to come down. We'll show you a good time and show you what Baltimore's about, and good seafood and all that stuff.
Yeah,
I'd love to.
Well, thanks again.
Yeah,
thanks, Josh. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Everyone listening to this, the website is Co-Balt Workspace, right? .com, not workplace. Yeah. And you can find Josh. We'll ask for your information. We'll throw it in there in the show notes. But I really appreciate again your time, Josh, and we'll see you on the next one.
You too. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.